So one of the reasons we come year after year is there is something in our Jewish tradition that always is illuminating in the sense that it helps us learn about ourselves. And that's what the holidays are. They're an attempt to soak up what it is in our tradition that enhances our life with a positive message we can then use as we enter the new year. And it begins with the same theme. The first thing I need to say to all of you is, happy birthday. You may say happy birthday back to me. We'll do it one more time. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
That was terrific. Yeah. And the reason why many of us grew up, we didn't realize Rosh Hashanah was a birthday. Rosh Hashanah is not in the Torah. Rosh Hashanah is a creation by the rabbinic tradition. And they decided Rosh Hashanah would be the birthday of the world. Arbitrarily. The rabbis said this would be a birthday of the world. By the way, birthday of creation of the world. How many days did it take God to create the world? 6, good. So happy no one said 7. 6 days. Which of the 6 days is the birthday that we celebrate tonight? You would typically think it would be day 6. It's interesting. We're celebrating the creation of the world, but we're celebrating day 6. Why? Why? Not because he was done. Why day 6? Man. The pinnacle of creation comes at the end. The 6th day, God says, let us make man in our own image. In the image of God created he them, male and female. Many of us grew up thinking that the Bible only has a story in which God creates Adam and then later takes a rib, creates Eve, and that man comes first. There is a story like that. Chapter 2. The rabbis are celebrating chapter 1. Actually, they're celebrating the whole thing. But they're celebrating the creation of people. And that's because the Jewish tradition celebrates human beings, male and female, without distinction. Humanity is expressed in the Hebrew word Adam. Adam is male and female. And the Jewish notion is there is enormous potential in the human spirit, the human soul. The human being will be God's partner in the rest of creation. God did not complete creation in 6 days. The Jewish tradition teaches us that creation goes on day after day. The prayer book says, who renews creation daily. It's a mindset. By the way, I hope I don't have to, we're not doing it tonight, but I hope I don't have to. Everything I'm talking about here is the poetry of the Jewish tradition. It's not about a God who in 6 days did anything. It's about a mindset that the Jewish tradition is asking us to embrace. The importance of the human being. And the importance of the human being is every individual is created in the image of God, which means there is a sanctity, an integrity to every human being. Every human being. And that becomes a theme in Jewish literature. The extent to which it is a universal embrace of all humanity. Lest anyone be confused, Adam was not Jewish. Adam was the quintessential human being. And we are told every human being born is like a new world being given to us. Every single person, every one of us is a world in and of ourselves. Because we have the ability to change the world, and because every one of us does make a difference in the world. We are unique. There is no one like any one of us in this room. We are a world unto ourselves. We are supposed to say every morning, according to the Jewish tradition, "For me was the world created," not as a sign of arrogance, but as a statement of responsibility. If the world was created for me, we have a responsibility to make it a better place. We have a responsibility to work with God in the rest of creation. And that is why one of the most famous lines in the entire Jewish tradition is so well known. One who saves a single life is having credited for having saved the entire world. One who destroys a single life is charged with having destroyed the entire world, because every human being is the world. And that's the premise. And then the high holidays come and say, celebrate the creativity of male and female, of generations. And it's important, this is important in ways this year that are not always true. It's always true, but it's more true this year. That it's very important that Jews come together on the Rosh Hashanah and celebrate human capacity. Human capacity to transform the world, to make this world a more just, sweeter, kinder, more loving world. We come tonight to shed whatever nonsense is outside this room. The high holidays are a sanctuary where we are to recharge our batteries. But we understand the world we live in today, the world we leave to come into this room, it is such an upsetting world. It is a world filled with bitterness, enmity, anger. Fewer and few people are ready to communicate with each other. There is something ugly that people feel about the world today. And for those of us who grew up in the 1950s, all of a sudden we're talking about the possibility, however remote, the possibility of a nuclear conflagration. The era we are in today is a frightening, upsetting, off-putting context. And we come in here, and the Jewish tradition charges us to re-energize our idealism. Cynicism is forbidden on the high holidays. Cynicism is an aveira, a sin, on the high holidays. On the high holidays, we are once again permitted and encouraged to dream the messianic dreams of the prophets and our rabbinic sages who taught us Everyone is created in the image of God, and we will be responsible for and care for the orphan, the widow, and the stranger in our midst, regardless of where that stranger comes from. That's the Jewish command of the high holidays. There may be no racism. There can be no bigotry. There can be no authoritative abuse of power. And one of the things the Jew is charged with as we begin a new year is to find his or her own way, and we're given enormous latitude. We are free human beings. We find our own way. But the way we are trying to find is, how do we stand up to any expression of hatred, any expression that diminishes another human being because of their race, their color, their place of national origin, their economic status, who their mother or father were, what language they speak, how ill are they, what do they want of life. The Jew has a responsibility, says Rosh Hashanah, to recharge idealism, vision of messianic proportion, and to then do whatever we can to move that vision forward. It is an ethic that is steeped in our Jewish tradition. One of the most beautiful midrashim in the Talmud says the following, and sometimes we don't appreciate how remarkably universalistic our Jewish tradition is. The Talmud says, wonderful passage, I call heaven and earth to witness that whether one is a man or a woman, whether one is a slave or a free man, whether one is a homeborn or a stranger, whether one is rich or poor, whether one is a Jew or a non-Jew, the Shekhinah, God's presence, rests on every single one of them, depending on their quality of service and their quality of deed. It's reminiscent of a line which ultimately becomes part of American lore, that ultimately everyone must be judged is the wrong word, although that's the word in the sentence. It means embraced. Every child should be embraced, not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That American ethic, uttered in front of the Lincoln Memorial by Martin Luther King, is a reverberation of the midrash that says, heaven and earth witnesses, you may not make a distinction, not between Jew and non-Jew, and not between homeborn and stranger. Because the power of the divine rests in every single human soul. That's a Jewish attitude. And how one then goes through the world and implements that, everybody has the right to do it. But understand, we need to understand what the Jewish tradition says unequivocally. Every now and then the Jewish tradition is equivocal. It's contradictory. It's not contradictory in this issue. Racism is a betrayal of Torah. And how do we know? How do we know that the rabbis were right? How do we know that the prophets who demanded justice from us that it's not about the fast. It's about breaking the bonds of slavery. The Jew is obsessed with freeing every slave, no matter how that slave is enslaved. Physically, emotionally, sexually, financially, educationally, culturally, sociologically. A slave must be freed. How do we know? And the Jewish tradition has an answer. The Jewish tradition's answer is there is a universal human experience. Human beings, at one moment or another, and sometimes more often, they, in the poetry of the Jewish tradition, hear, H-E-A-R, they hear inside them what the Jewish tradition calls a still, small voice. It's a phrase used throughout rabbinic literature. Sometimes this still, small voice is talking to a room. On Yom Kippur, there's a still, small voice. In the Midrash, we tell every morning. But the still small voice is a voice deep inside us. Poetically, we hear it, we feel it, and we know that when we are lovely and caring and embracing and tolerant, we are in harmony with not only the still small voice, but this voice in the universe as a whole. We're at one with the harmony of the universe. Every one of us, we're told, has moments. Maimonides calls them a flash of lightning. Moments when we are sure that doing righteousness isn't an option. It is a mitzvah. And that's the ultimate message of Rosh Hashanah. And the question this year is, how do we depict in a symbol the still small voice? Every now and then I meet somebody who says, we were discussing what symbol you're going to have this year. Like, how do you do that? I want to lay this to rest. I don't look at the news and come up with a symbol. I don't look at what's going on in the world. No. The symbol that I bring is something, when I'm not looking, it grabs hold of me. It screams to me. There's something so Jewish here that it's not like I choose the symbol. I do. But in some way, the symbol chooses me. So it's not a conscious. Ruth and I don't sit down and plot out symbols. I come to Ruth, I say, I had a thought. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I have a little, on my computer, file of maybe symbols. And then the rest just comes out of me. It's not out of me, by the way. It's out of the Jewish tradition. So I say to myself, something happened, and all of a sudden, oh, of course, that's how one depicts the still, small voice. The still, small voice. Okay. Very good. Now you can all see it? Okay. So, the still small voice is just a small, unpretentious line. Nothing very dramatic about it. Because the still small voice isn't dramatic. And yet, the way in which the still small voice is incorporated into certain usage in English and in other cultures as well gives an insight into how this symbol, a simple dash, reflects a Jewish understanding of what life is about and what it means to be in tune with the still small voice. Now I'm going to give you one example of how that is used. This is how the dash is sometimes used. Can you all see that? Can you all see that? You see the dash? And what is this? What am I holding here? What? The years of somebody's life. Yes. Incidentally, can somebody tell me who this is? You understand, if I was going to put somebody's life on this board, it couldn't be anybody I knew. But it is somebody. Who? Say it louder. Who? Spell it. Who? How'd you spell it? I told you, I just can't hear. Moses is right. Moses is right. Do you understand it's Moses? Now that you see it, you understand? By the way, you understand Moses lived BC, BCE. So he was born in 1393. What does that mean? That's what historians tell me. He was born in 1393. How many years did he live? How many? 120. So he died in 1273. And he was one of the lucky ones because when he died at 120, his eyes were not dimmed and his natural forces were not abated. Good for Moses. And the reason why I picked this is it becomes symbolic of what we say to everyone. What we say to everyone is, you should live to 120. Why do we say you should live to 120? Because that's what Moses did. So in some way, this is sort of nice. We should all love, everybody we love should have these kind of years. But what's interesting is, in the Jewish tradition, it's not this or this that is important. What's important in this symbol is this. It's all about the dash of one's life. There's no guarantee of how many years any of us will have. This dash is about what does each of us make of whatever years we do have. And there's something remarkable about this dash. First of all, it is egalitarian. It's written the same way for men, for women, for Jews, for non-Jews, for rich and poor, for master and slave, for oppressor and victim. Everybody's got the same dash. Regardless of race, color, religion, sexual orientation, place of national origin, it's all the same dash. Because ultimately, human beings as an entirety are linked together. Second, it's so small. It's not a big dash. By the way, what's interesting is if a person lives 120 years, that person doesn't get a bigger dash. Isn't that fascinating? The dash has nothing to do with the years because every dash is the same. The Jewish tradition doesn't care. When I say that, we wish good for people. We wish you to live 120. But it's not what we're obsessed with. Nor are Jews obsessed with the afterlife. We're obsessed with what do you do with whatever years you have right here. And that's a challenge for each of us. What are we making of our dash of life? And that's the high holidays. The high holidays are, what am I, who am I, what do I want to be, and how am I doing with my dash? And the dash is never over, by the way. The dash is never over. One always has a chance to make anything one wants out of the dash. The dash is constantly in the making. And one can be less than excited about whatever the dash was last year. It doesn't matter. This is Rosh Hashanah. This is a Shana that is new. And the Jewish tradition tells us what's new. The world spins around. What's new? Each of us is new. All over again. Each year. We have the opportunity to make of this anything we want, regardless of what the dash has been in the past. And we want to be proud of our dash. And the Jewish tradition says the most important thing we can do to make our dash meaningful is do gmilut chasadim. We talked about that last year. It's not the big things that make the real difference. The small dash represents how it's all in the day-to-day relationships we have with other people that make this life meaningful with the dash. And in some way, this dash is a response to the still, small voice. And then the dash is used in one other context, one other brilliant Jewish universal context, which elucidates what this is about and celebrates the still small voice. The other use of the dash is in the single most important modern Jewish articulation of rabbinic teaching. This is just rabbinics, the teachings of the rabbis in a modern form. Martin Buber creates I thou and says the ultimate goal of life is to be an I related to a thou and a thou related to an I, to be a separate individual. And this is so important. Buber and Soloveitchik, Rav Soloveitchik, perhaps the greatest modern Orthodox scholar who created modern Orthodoxy, talks all the time about Martin Buber. And he tries to explain what Buber is trying to teach. And Soloveitchik explains, any I who enters into a relationship with another thou always remains a separate individual with integrity and sanctity. One does not give up one's identity or individuality. One sacrifices nothing in terms of human soul. And in the I-thou relationship, Soloveitchik says, the I and the thou become a new entity. For Soloveitchik, I-thou don't become a couple. It's not a couple. The I-thou relationship creates a new persona, a new world, where the two together make another presence for good in the world. And we understand it intuitively. Very often you will meet two people who have a very special relationship. You will never mention one without the other. Penn and Teller. That was a joke. That was a joke. I use it only because so many of you have said congratulations to me. So I use it as a model. There is now something called Ari Lindsay. Ari, you're no less. Lindsay, you're no less. There are moments when you're together and we experience you as one. And we relate to you as one. It happens with marriage. It happens with brothers. It happens with good friends. It happens with any people who connect so much that while they stay who they are, they become another world for us. That is what I-thou is. It's being open to those moments when one experiences another human being and the other human being enters into a relationship with us that changes them and us in gorgeous, uplifting, elevating ways. There's a rabbinic drash on I-thou which points out, if you take the dash away, the first two letters spell the word it. What changes I-thou, or better said, what changes the it to I-thou is a dash. It's the honest relationship in which one does not try to enslave the other. It's not about one is more and one is less. It's one is embracing the other who's embracing the other. And I've spoken about this before. We could speak all night about this. For this purpose, I just want you to understand how the still small voice is what makes the I, thou possible. Every one of us cherishes the I, thou. There's a famous commentary. You know the line. If I am not for myself, if I am not for, you remember this line? If I am not for myself, who will be? If I'm for myself alone, no. If I am not for myself alone, shall I give you the Hebrew? If I am not for myself alone, ma'ani. What am I? And the drash goes like this. Why is it? Shouldn't it have said, if I am for myself alone, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm for myself, who am I? No. Somebody who is only for themselves never enters the I, thou. They remain an it. They are still a what, not a who. The challenge of our life is to be the who in relationship to each other. That is what is being suggested by one short line. Relationship, what we make of our lives, and how we become an I, thou with people who are important to us. And the I, thou relationship is all about recognizing, seeing the other person. The Jewish tradition says that the biggest pain in life comes from being unseen, being neglected, not being included, being alone. And it's something every human being experiences at moments. When we're in a context and we feel like we're nothing, we're nobody. People are treating us like we're not there. Two Jews wrote a whole series of fabulous Broadway musicals. And one of their songs exquisitely expresses the feeling people have of alienation and loneliness and rejection. It was written by Fred and John. John Kander, Fred Ed. They wrote a show, Chicago. They wrote a song for Joel Gray. He did it first on Broadway. And the song was called Mr. Cellophane. And the whole song is, he gets up and says, in essence, I am cellophane to other people. And the refrain is, you can look right through me, walk right by me, and never know I'm there. It is hideous to look right through someone, to walk right by someone, and never see they're there. In the Jewish tradition, it's the opposite. And by the way, the other great playwright, another great playwright of America in the 20th century, a Jewish playwright, says the flip. although he is ultimately addressing the same question. Arthur Miller, Death of a Salesman, toward the end of the play, when the sons seem to want nothing more to do with their father, have forgotten what their father was and is. And Linda says of Willie Loman, they finally get her angry. And she says near the very end of the play, attention. Attention must be paid. It's not about look right by me, look right through me, never know I'm. It's human beings need to feel they are noticed. And response is to them, that they have value. Soloveitchik also gives this marvelous drash where he's talking about the word shalom. He's describing a person in a crowded room, but he doesn't know anybody. And this person feels alienated and alone and small and unworthy. And then somebody comes up to him and says, Shalom. I'm so-and-so, who are you? And in a flash, the word shalom wipes loneliness away. A person has seen him and embraced him. He is now valuable. He's important. Everybody wants to be noticed. Attention should be given to everyone. And it's part of life that sometimes we are too lazy, too tired, too self-absorbed, just not thinking right. And we do something to hurt another person's feelings. Sticks and stones can break my bones. But the notion that names will never hurt me, whoever wrote that's an idiot. The most powerful pain comes when somebody we love ignores us, doesn't seem to value us, or there's a break, a juncture in our relationship. And when that happens, one's world is in chaos. Until it's made right, one lives in anxiety and anguish. And then somebody says, I'm sorry. I love you. How can I help you? I'll be there. You can count on me. I will be there to dance at your wedding, and I'll be there in silent presence when you're in sorrow. I will be there because I'm in an I-thou relationship with you. That's the theme of the High Holidays. How does one in some way instill into that dash between 2 years as much meaning as possible? And how does one find and stay open to the I-thou relationship, which elevates life, elevates the other, elevates us, elevates community in ways that are a blessing and a function of the still small voice. The adventure to life, say the rabbis, is trying to give the small little dash as much meaning as possible and enabling it to connect people, wherever it is possible, as we begin the journey of these high holidays. May this be in some way a focus for us, that we want to make our dash as full and rich and loving as is humanly possible. And we all say,